Conservative Party are now the party of tax and spend, apparently. Looks like some of the measures that were implemented by the government, a lot of that kind of spending a lot of money, raising taxes and things during the pandemic, was not just a symptom of the coronavirus crisis and the government sort of responding to that. It appears to be just generally the way that the government is going to operate. So today, in a speech to the House of Commons, Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, laid out the budget, and it had some very interesting things in it. Labour, of course, have criticised a lot of it, and Rachel Reeves was sort of picking it to pieces in the House of Commons in response. But this is a new age for the Conservative Party. It really is. If you compare this budget to what it was like in 2010, 2011, 2012, when the Conservatives first came to power after 13 years of Labour government, the difference is so stark. It's like chalk and cheese. It really is. So this new budget contains a lot of stuff, but something that is very, very promising is big boosts of investment in basically every aspect of the public sector. Now, of course, it's the Conservatives. They've promised these things before and they've never happened, right? Or very rarely happened. But this does seem to be potentially something that they're going to at least partially deliver on. Things like, obviously, healthcare and education and things like that going to be getting a boost in investment. And what's fascinating as well is they're actually raising corporate taxes on banks. They're raising those on banks. So banks are going to be paying more in that regard. Labour are complaining that actually they're cutting taxes for banks generally. That's going up, but other things are going down. And of course, there's a lot of other negative things in the budget that we'll get onto in a minute. But that is very strange, right? Very strange indeed. And there's other things in there like changing the level of taxes on different kinds of alcohol, so to try and boost sort of the financial situation in a lot of pubs and bars. The government said that they're going to basically reduce taxes on some forms of alcohol, like beers and ciders and things, and lagers, and they're going to increase it for some others. I think Prosecco was one of them, like sparkling wines and things like that. Sunak also announced that the government's going to be lowering the taper rate of universal credit from 63% to 55%, which basically means for every extra pound someone earns when they're on universal credit, their UC will only be reduced by 55 pence rather than 63 pence. So it's still kind of mental that that's actually the way that our benefit system works, but at least that's being reduced. And he's claimed that move, which will be implemented no later than the 1st of December, would see nearly 2 million families keep on average an extra £1,000 a year. Now, of course, the government's just removed the £20 universal credit uplift. We know that about 60% of impoverished people in the UK are in working families. We know that about 37% of people on universal credit actually have a job. So clearly that's not addressing that very well, but it's better than nothing, I suppose. So on that regard, in that regard, we've got a lot of stuff that's actually, sort of mildly positive. However, there of course are a lot of issues with this budget. So if you want to get a flight, from one part of the UK to another, that's going to cost you less now. It's going to encourage people to take domestic flights. Now that's absolutely ridiculous. We should be investing in high-speed railways and other kinds of decent public transport that actually is, isn't going to be devastating for the environment, because obviously air travel is very, very bad for the environment. Everyone's got to do it sometime, but we should be trying to reduce it as much as we possibly can. So that was definitely something that I was pretty disappointed in. The biggest problem, though, with this budget is just the total absence of any plans to reduce in-work poverty. There just doesn't really seem to be anything about. I mean, we've got like tiny increases in wages, in the minimum wage for certain people, and while that's better than nothing, it's nowhere near enough. And of course, climate change is just doesn't seem to be on this government's radar. They're investing little bits and pieces here and there, but we need a major program of green investment. And that's, you know, say what you want about Labour, but at least they have a good green investment plan, you know, that's going to create a lot of good jobs, a lot of, you know, it's going to invest a lot in green industry and, you know, that kind of thing, and manufacturing in the UK and things like that. The government just doesn't seem to want to do that, right? So this budget is definitely, certainly, it's not ideal, but hey, you know, I'm interested in all of your thoughts on this budget and on the government's plans, and, you know, how they're going to be, you know, if they're actually going to implement this correctly. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Cheers.